Hi class. So today, have your notebooks out. Continue to add to your notebooks. Worst case situation, if I don't see you back at school, you'll at least have it all put together for your final exam. We do have an assessment this week happening in Aleks, so make sure you're staying caught up and on top of that. You need to get an 85% on that practice quiz before it will let you take the actual quiz. So if you're not getting that, reach out, let me know. We can work on things together and we'll go from there. Today we are going to add to our list function notation. Okay, I realize some of you are either maybe working a little bit ahead or a little bit behind or whatever, but this is really for Tuesday, March 24th. Kind of squeezing that in over there. Function notation is a pretty straightforward one that we do. Most of my students do great with this one. If we want to do something with function notation, there's two things that we can be looking at. A, we can be looking at just a basic function rule. So remember last week we talked about the idea of a function rule being something, a function being something that had no repeats in the x value. Okay, and we could represent it as a table, as a mapping, as a graph. Okay, well, there's an additional way that we can represent it, and that is just as a function rule. Okay, and a function rule is just an equation. Okay, so we're just going to be looking at an equation with x and y. So maybe we have a function rule that says y equals 3x plus 4. Okay, and in a function rule, we already know that our x value is functioning as the domain, right? We talked about that last week. But the x is also going to function as our input. And our y value is going to function as our output. So we could have something that says, okay, evaluate this function rule for when x equals 7. And all that's asking us to do is to take that 7 and to plug it in for x. So instead of saying y equals 3x plus 4, we're going to say y equals 3 times 7 plus 4. And whether you want to do this by hand, whether or not you want to type it in a calculator, right? You could type in exactly what you see. 3 times 7 plus 4. Okay, either way, we get an answer that y equals 25. Now, with a function rule, we could see lots of different ways that we're asked to input a value. Okay, we could see it as it just giving us the x value. Okay, but we also might see it as a table, and this is one of the more common ways that we see. Here, let me get a different color to make it a little bit easier. So maybe we have a table that says this, and it's asking us to fill in these y values. Well, if this is still our function rule up here, we're just now being asked to plug in 3 different numbers. Okay, and so we'll just do this 3 different times. So instead of saying 3 times x, for this first one, I'll now say 3 times negative 3 plus 4. Okay, so in my calculator, right, I'll do 3 times negative 3 plus 4 equals negative 5. Okay, and for my next one, I'll do 3 times 0 plus 4. Now, hopefully we know that that's 0, or this part is 0 plus 4, but you could use a calculator if you want to. Okay, and then we'll do 3 times 9 plus 4, and we will get 31. Okay, and so you have problems in Aleks that are just asking you to complete the table by plugging that in multiple times, right? We just do that in a calculator. Now, sometimes instead of it being written as a function rule, we also have this fancy way that we can write it that's called function notation. Okay, function notation says that instead of y, we are going to replace it with this. It's an f and then a parenthesis and then an x and then a closed parenthesis. And we read this as f of x. It's a function of x. It's a function being evaluated for an x value. And so this original function rule would look exactly the same, except this y would now be f of x. Okay, and instead of something just saying, okay, if x equals 7 or if x equals 9, it would now say find f of maybe 11. Okay, so while this looks very different, it's asking us to do the exact same thing. We are still taking this 11 and we are putting it in for our x value. So instead of saying 3 times x, I'm now going to say 3 times 11 plus 4. Okay, so I would say f of 11. Let's see, 3 times 11 is 33. Plus 4 is going to give me 37. You could use a calculator if you needed to. Okay, but f of 11 would equal 37. Okay, so these things in function notation can be more complex. They can even be more simple. They can be identified with different letters. Okay, so sometimes we'll be given I don't know, f of x equals x plus 2, and g of x equals x squared minus 2x. Okay, and then maybe Alex will ask you to find something like f of 4. Okay, so no problem. We just need to recognize that because this has an f sitting in front of it, that we need to pick the function that has an f in it. So this one over here is irrelevant because it has a g. We want the function that has an f. So we're going to ignore this, and we're going to plug this 4 in for x. So instead of saying x plus 2, I'm going to say 4 plus 2. Oops, f of 4 equals 6. Okay, so if it asked me to find maybe, I don't know, g of negative 3. Since this has a g, I want to go into the g function. Now this one has 2 x's in it, so this negative 3 is actually going to go in for both of them. Now be very careful. I've worked with several of you on this. Your calculator is a great tool, but only if you use it correctly. Okay, so negative 3 squared, if you're putting it in your calculator, has to be in parentheses. Okay, if you forget those parentheses, you'll keep getting the wrong answer and you will get frustrated when your little thing goes down instead of up. Okay, but as long as you use those parentheses, put this then in your calculator just like you see it. And we get 15. Now, this could also be in a table. This could be in any format. So whichever option it is, you're still just plugging in those values. Today, you need to complete the exit slip. So log into Aleks and complete your exit slip for e-learning today. It's labeled e-learning Tuesday, March 24th. Okay, also make sure you're staying on top of getting that quiz done. So those count as your Aleks minutes this week. Some of you are starting to fall behind, and we want to make sure that we don't get too far behind. I will see you guys later. Have a great week.